As discussed in the Creating User Profile video, the medic type under which a user's profile is created is the primary hierarchy in determining a user's access in the system when they log in using a user ID and password. Secondary to that user profile type, however, is the permissions under their user role, and then third would be additional user roles assigned to them. And that is the subject of this specific video. So again, I have logged in here as an administrator. For this discussion, we're over here in the admin column on the far right. We're going to look at these top two choices, role and user role. Now, the role designation that we're going to look at is directly tied to the user profile or their medic type. For practice management, the default role is biller, which, if you'll recall from our Creating User Profile video, corresponds to our medics type billing staff. So to discuss the permissions of our billing staff, we're just going to go ahead and select our biller role. And notice along the left-hand margin, we have a table that displays various access rights. If you want them to have read-only rights, you notice that there's a toggle box here. All are. R means read only, and we have our legend here on the right that tells us we have an R for read, C for create, U for update, D for delete, and A for approve. Now, the ability to create or add new, delete, and approve, you will notice not every function has those pieces. Every function has at least read-only access. So generically looking down through the table, we see, for instance, here the appointments. Billers have read and update access, but not the ability of creating or deleting. Patient demographics and guarantor information, however, they have full access. We scroll into the encounter, it's read only, because billers typically are not involved with the clinical documentation. We get down here to the computerized physician order entry, and they don't even have read access. Billers are working with orders, it's only after the fact once they're on the claim. However, the message module, billers have total access. They don't need refills. Reports is kind of hit or miss based on local preferences. So generically, they have some reports available, such as all the billing reports will be pre-selected, but the clinical reports and metrics reports are typically not defaulting for the billing staff. And then as we get down here into the configuration, you'll start to see a lot of the options are deselected. Items that are not relevant on the billing side, they may not even have read-only access, for instance. Whereas you get to the items that are billing specific and they are going to have full access. Some of these you'll notice the delete is not selected, others they are. This is also going to depend greatly on local processes. Sometimes they may be reserved for the billing supervisor. When we get down here further into the billing specific things, for instance, you will notice everything is selected by default for the claim level, for the remittance level, penalty claims, write-offs, and so on. So to give the individual a permission, you would select it. To deny the permission, you would deselect it. Now, the thing to keep in mind with regards to all of these permissions in the table, back up here on the left, I will remind you this is at a role level. This means that these permissions will be applicable to every user assigned that medic type. So when a user profile is created under medic type billing staff, these permissions will be the base permissions for that user as the first hierarchy. The second layer in user permission hierarchy is with regards to assigning secondary user roles. So back under the configuration menu here, this time I'm going to go to the admin column and choose user role. Now this time, instead of choosing a role, we're going to actually choose a specific user. So I'm going to go ahead and choose my new biller, Quinn Perkins. And this time we will see in the primary role a biller has been assigned, and she has no other user role currently assigned to her. So now at an individual user level, in addition to the permissions implied by the medic type, we can now give a specific human additional permissions by assigning individual roles. This is where the dual access comes in for those of you who have both EMR and practice management. For instance, in our case, Quinn is a biller primary and also needs clinical access. We may also want to give her the nurse's role. There's a variety of additional roles here. I'm obviously not going to go into all of them in this individual video, but suffice it to say that there is no limit to the additional roles a specific person can have. This is also how you can create the concept of super users. So we're just going to go ahead, for instance, now and say Quinn is a super biller. We're going to give her the ability of reopening batches. Now, as a biller, they can create batches, but once a batch has been posted, you need this additional role in order to reopen them. Same thing with payment plans. So we're just going to go ahead and save this. If I go back in here now and choose one of my other billers, for instance, Donna Smith, notice how she is still just our basic biller. She does not have those additional permissions, whereas Quinn does. So this would be an indication perhaps where Quinn may be my billing supervisor, so she has those abilities of reopening something that has previously been posted, whereas my typical billers cannot. Now the third layer to this is kind of a combination of the two. Now a no access role is both a role and then it is assigned as a user role. So for instance, if I go under the role again, we're going to create a new one. So I'm going to say add new, and let's just call it super biller. And I want to click the option that says no access. Now what no access means simply is that it is not associated to a user profile and does not require a user ID and password. It still, however, allows the user that has this role assigned to him or her to have the specified permissions underneath. Now the nice thing about a no access role is this is where you can build exceptional permissions to certain individuals, and the context again is a biller. We already looked at the basic permissions a biller has, such as the read and update access to the appointment, full access to patient, and so on. I do not need to redefine those because those are already assigned at the primary role level. So with my no access role, all I need to do is the additional permissions that are required. So for instance, if I want to go all the way down here to the bottom and say for my super biller, I do want them to have the ability of working with PQRS. Even though the PQRS is on the patient encounter side, which is clinical, because PQRS in prognosis is claim-based, sometimes the billing office may be responsible. So I want to go ahead and give the super biller PQRS access. Maybe the standard billers do not have the ability of approving penalty claims. So I want to give super billers the ability of approving. That way my billers can create the penalty claim, but it will have to go up the channel to be approved. I'm just going to go ahead and save that for demonstration purposes. So now I have created a no access role called super biller. So if I go back to my user role option now, I'm going to choose Quinn, who we decided was our billing supervisor. And now I have that brand new option called super biller that I'm going to give to her, but nobody else. So now in addition to her standard permissions as a biller, the additional managerial options I just assigned to her, I've also now given her a new no access role that no other biller has in the office. Now one last feature I want to mention in conjunction with user roles. I'm going to go ahead and open up the biller role again, and this is applicable to your no access roles as well as your standard system roles. We have this option at the top called Include in Mailing List. If you mark that option, I'm just going to go ahead and save it. Throughout the system, wherever you can compose a message, I'm going to just go ahead and show you the message compose real quick, where you have an option of roles. Now that I have said include role biller in my mailing list, you can now create a distribution mailing list to everybody in your practice that has that role assigned. The same concept, if we go back in there, is the assign to. Now, one of the other features in practice management, which is handled under the assign task video, is the ability of assigning claims to individuals within the practice. You also have the functionality of assigning them to a role as well. That will be covered in more detail in the assign task video. So in review, with regards to user role and permissions inside practice management, There is a three-tier hierarchy. 1, the primary role, which is linked to the MEDDIC type, determines the base permissions. Secondary user roles can also be assigned, and in addition, you can create no-access user roles to create a super user concept. Role permissions can be read-only, create, update or modify, delete, and approve. There's also role-level functionality such as creating distribution mailing lists, as well as assigning individual claims to a group of individuals. That concludes this video within the series. Please click the appropriate link below for your next step. If you'd like to take a quiz, you will receive your results in real time directly on the screen so that you can see how well you've done. If you answer incorrectly, the system will prompt you with the correct response. In addition, a confidential email will be sent to the education team to help us better serve you with our educational offerings. Second, advance to the next video within the series you're currently in. And finally, return to the video library main page. As always, feel free to contact us through the Resource Center or email with any additional questions or comments.